Welcome back. This is KBC News Check, and on this second hour, as I had told you earlier, is that we are looking at matters autism. It is indeed a condition of the brain, and those who are joining me now on set, they have had it firsthand. This is because they are not only autism champions, they are parents parents who have kids who have this condition. Let me introduce our first guest, Sylvia Moraa. Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
And also we have Owiti.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know it's not a well-known condition in Kenya. And your parents who live with kids who have autism, and you don't seem to have any autism at all. Perhaps we can start with you. How has that journey been?
I like the way you say that. We don't seem to have any autism.
Yeah.
It's not something that has a face for starting. You cannot tell when someone walks in. You cannot identify that they have it unless they have some of the characteristics, and they vary. So in full, it is autism spectrum disorder. That's the full definition, and it's a very wide spectrum. It's been quite an interesting journey, to say the least, because as parents, when you get a child, you expect a perfect child. And as you grow, you keep waiting for things to change until the point someone tells you you need to seek intervention. And then that's when the word autism drops, and not many people know or understand. And what happens to us is the first thing is denial. We spiral into depression, majority of us. So it will take you time before you can embrace it and all the challenges that it comes with. And every phase is a whole new lesson altogether. So every day is trying to adjust, trying to embrace, and trying to take this child who's different from the others and give them the best that you can without a manual from anywhere.
Dan, you're also a parent with a child who has autism. Tell us your experience.
I think she's really wrapped it all very well. The first one is usually a shock to a parent. My son was diagnosed on the second day of his birth. So from there, we thank God that the doctor we saw prepared us. But being prepared doesn't mean that you are really alive to the facts that are waiting for you. So it was a journey. First of all, it's a very tough journey in terms of finances, like she's told you. At 12, at 13, at 14, an autistic child would still need a caregiver. So that means that if we are in the same category with you with kids, if you don't have a kid with autism who is 12, and I have a kid with autism who is 12, your budget will be lower by not having a caretaker to take a caregiver to take care of your child. I must have one. Now then we come to the drugs. The reason why I don't want to repeat what she said, because I'm trying now to go to a different level. Now we have the drugs, especially where it is caused by cerebral palsy. You realize that there are drugs these kids will have for as long time as they can. And also the consultation fees for the doctors. And also due to the fact that you can't also not trust people with them. Like if you have an nonverbal like my son, how do you leave him in the house? How are you sure that the person you have left him with will take good care of him? How do you inspect and see that he's fine? Thirdly, the way you said, it doesn't have a face. My son is normal. If he walks in there, you will not know that he has a problem. But he's growing big. So imagine a situation where he's walking and someone cannot be able to determine that this boy has a problem, and maybe comes and grabs your hand. And we are talking about a city like Nairobi. How will you react? You are being mugged.
Yes.
Without knowing that this person needs help. So that is why we took this route as a father, to talk about it and to be able to demystify some of the myths which are there, because our community is also not well informed. For instance, our culture and our traditions, most of them will brand your son or your family very funny names. Some will not even relate to you. Some do not even want to do anything to do with you.
We are going to look at this because I'm quite sure there's a myriad of challenges as parents you face, leave alone the kid, the parents themselves. Sylvia, let me get back to you. Autism is not a very well-known condition in Kenya, and as Dan has put it, it's kind of puts, makes it even harder for a person or a kid with autism to be assisted.
Yeah.
Yes.
First of all,
and there are also myths of how the kid, Sylvia is no more, the kid is not.
So there is the cultural stigma that comes with it. There is the cultural beliefs that we have as in the African continent, and the fact that autism awareness has just begun. And if you look back in the days when people, because most people are saying this was not there before, it's not a fact of it was not there before. The level of awareness has increased, so many people are more aware. Earlier on, it would be mtoto ni mwenda wazimu, because like he said, you find a child, when we look at the milestones, they don't achieve them. We have the ones who are nonverbal, we have the ones who have variety of comorbid conditions. Comorbid conditions are things like epilepsy, coexisting conditions with autism. Yeah, you can have a child with autism plus cerebral palsy, Down syndrome and autism. And like we said, these are more of the invisible disabilities. And embracing them as a disability and also giving them the benefits that they deserve as any other person with disability is one of the things that we're also championing for. So you can imagine for you who expects that adult to walk in to have a conversation with you and they're not engaging you, the first thing you will say is, what's wrong with this person? The next thing, if you find a child who, let's say, their muscular tone is not perfect, they're drooling, you'll ask yourself, how come an adult? Why, you know? There is that judgment that we always pass as a community before we even embrace who they are or try to understand that there would be something wrong. Like I said, if the nonverbal children, some of the things, if you look at the milestones, not all of them are nonverbal, because you see that those who have intellectual disabilities, there are those who are highly talented, so you have to actually, as a parent, figure out and also try and embrace and try and push and see and identify where your child suits best. And as we said, remember when we started, it is a spectrum. When you meet one person with autism, that's one. I have 2 kids with it. They are totally different.
How old are they, if you don't mind me asking?
Andrew is turning 12 and Bradley is 11 and a half. Yeah. And they are totally different, 2 totally different human beings in their socialization, in their mannerisms, in their, there is something called steaming. Steaming is where the environment is very uncomfortable for them. So they develop behaviors like rocking their chairs, biting themselves. There are those who hit their heads. So you can imagine you walk into my house and my kid is screaming and banging his head. You'll think like he's lost it. But you see, there is that frustration that they get when they cannot communicate. I can feel something, I can do something. You can see I'm in a band. Yes. This is because we had an episode. He's having preteen, he's having hormonal changes. He had a meltdown that we've never seen, never experienced. He got violent, and in the process of that, I fractured my thumb. But you see, that's part of parenting. It comes without a warning, you know, and it was for a moment because he was unwell. So he cannot communicate to you that feeling, that the way your child will tell you, I'm sick, I'm running a fever, I have my throat. He was having an infection. It's something I can't tell. He was not running a fever or anything.
So he's not speaking.
And he's not speaking. You know, he speaks 3 words, but he's more of a visual learner. They also learn very differently.
All right. And still on that, you've talked about talented, and that is why I've insisted that in 2020, the winner of America Got Talent was a kid who who's
blind and autistic.
Blind and autistic as well. Just in case you joined us, this is KBC News Check. On this hour, we are looking at matters autism and how to manage it. And I'm privileged to have 2 parents who have kids with autism. And earlier on, we were just trying to get a feel of how hard or how they are able to manage and be able to live with them and try as much as possible to help them grow. And coming to you, Dan, and it was quite touching what you guys have to go through each and every day. Now, looking at how people view autism in Kenya, Sylvia has had an episode, and it's not the first episode, right?
Yeah, we go. It's our life.
And there's this question, is that you feel that the kid is okay when you are there, or you have a caregiver, just as you said, but they have to go to school. That's a whole new challenge.
Exactly.
Kindly.
Now, before I go to school, I want us to have the trail of thought of the general community. Number one, what about your neighbors? how supportive can they be? How many parents can go and talk to their neighbor and explain to them what is going through and how to accept that child? How are they going to view you? Some will actually, if you are in a rented house, they will vacate and go look for another house. Number two, another big community which I am really working with currently is the church. Why? When people are low, they seek solace in church. Are the pastors really knowledgeable about this? They may not be. What about the ushers? Like the situation she had. If that was in the church, what could have happened? Being thrown away. Yes. And some of the churches do not even have the idea, even the pastors. I was having a conversation with a pastor 2 weekends ago. I'm currently doing a training in their church for the ushers to be able to handle children with special needs. And he told me, honestly, Dan, I have lost people without knowledge. Why? Because you find this boy is in church and he's not looking at you. First of all, they don't look at you. They avoid eye contact. Then is now nonverbal. But when you look at him, he looks well. So what goes into your mind first is, huyu ni kichwa ngumu. Hivyo ndo maybe anafanya kwa nyumba. So it comes back to the parent. Hujalea mtoto vizuri. Without going to the background. So I've been really working closely with the churches just to be able to make sure that they understand. Some are now embracing it. Some are actually creating special rooms for sensory integration so that the kids can feel okay. The third important part is also the transport, the public transport. How hard is it for you to use a matatu with your son?
I don't. It's
they will throw you out. You can't think about it because first of all, this boy is sensitive to noise. And the matatu wants to put that voice up there. Now you are in a disco and he has a problem with the lights and sound. Do you know it takes the grace of God to even have one understanding conductor to tell you to understand and go and tell the driver, reduce the voice. So first of all, the transport is now something that we are really trying to talk even to the matatu owners. I have written a letter to the Matatu Owners Association just to be able to sensitize them. Then now, I thank God, but this is also another time for campaign. The Nairobi city. How friendly are the streets? They are not. If you have someone on a wheelchair and you want to try and help them within the city, it becomes a problem because there are potholes everywhere, number one. Number two, the trenches are open. So it's likely that someone can fall. Now, if you have a child who has that problem and he runs,
because it's a characteristic.
It's a characteristic, yes.
Escapism.
So they will try to escape. When he escapes and he falls into that ditch, who do you even sue? How do you even begin? How do you even begin? Yes. What about the people around you? How are they going to think? Actually, the first thing that has actually happened to me is I have been confronted by people when my son had a meltdown, and they thought, no, you might have kidnapped this kid. Until he came down. Yes, my son. You don't understand. That's why we are really talking. That's why we are really talking and coming out and telling them, listen, we are handling issues here that you don't know. So you go to the supermarket with your son and then he gets a meltdown. It's another something altogether. So what we are saying is we are trying to talk to the society, not to be very quick to act, rather to have 1 minute to ask what is going on. When someone asks you that question, then you can tell him, please help me calm him down. Because the most efficient way to handle meltdown is just to hold them for some time until they come back down. Then they will just now go on with the activities. But at that time, and I really do sympathize with Moraa, because if you're having double or of the same, yes, I really do sympathize. And I really thank God for the strength she has and the grace she has, that she has been able to manage. And so when I come to school, we have special schools. But the challenge which are there in the special schools, especially the government one, is how even to assess the child and to give the child a proper assessment. Because most of the time, they will group all of them together without attending to the specific needs. So most of us, we end up resorting to homeschooling. So we take our time to study, read the books, consult people.
To become a teacher.
Exactly.
An untrained one, for that matter.
And a therapist.
And a therapist, yes.
Because let me just touch on education a bit, because that's very close to me. I sit at KICD, and it's one of the ways I'm hoping in the academic committee to see that we are able to integrate and make some change in that. And first of all, they don't learn like any other child. And they're all different in how. You have a tactile learner, a visual learner, and an audio learner. If you're lucky, you'll have the ones who, depending on the spectrum, the one who can actually just learn like any other. And when we have also the ones who have intellectual disabilities, you have the dyslexic ones, you have the ones with dysgraphia. So, as you mentioned, the EAC centers. EAC is early identification and assessment centers, where you take this child, understand their capabilities, then you let's call it prescribe, or rather advise on where they're better placed, which school, which institution, and those ones are supposed to be there. And the shocking statistics, let me tell you, in Nairobi with over 10,000 students, we only have 2 at an office where you will walk in and either you will find it empty. You know, these are feedback from parents. From me, we work with parents, and these are the things. We have a school. I did equipping of Kasarani Primary School Autism Unit, which was a dump site. Refurbished it last year, put in a therapy center, because we're also trying to champion for inclusion of therapy. The same way other kids have PE. Why can we not have therapy centers in the classroom? Me as a parent, I don't have to leave my job 2 to 3 times a week to take my child for therapy. Why can't it be part of what it is they're doing in school? As you said, they're crowded. The international standard is 1 to 5. 2 teachers to 5, 1 teacher and a support teacher, because you'll find that those ones who need toilet training, who need that support, that those who are still on diapers. Remember, it's a spectrum in anything we say. So there is all these kinds. I walked into one school, and in that school I found 35 students with autism, mental challenges, cerebral palsy, dyslexic, and you have 2 teachers. So how are they going to give that integration, that one-on-one attention, so that this child learns the way they need to learn? And that's why you find we're pushing for equity. Equity, not equality. We're talking about understand my child. If my child is more of an electronic learner, let us give them that. If it's a tactile
more or less
learner,
like a CBC for them.
Exactly, yes. CBC is good. But then you see we are doing it there. But in the special units, we're not giving them the equipment. So what's the essence? You understand? Yes, if you put me in a class, you say, we're talking about integration right now. Our government is going through integration, where we are saying that let's not seclude special units, but if you go to any school, special unit is at the corner on their own. All right? So I have seen that happening in schools, and we've seen schools that have tried to do integration, and they do very well. Some lessons specialized, and some with others. And then now you're helped to integrate, because these special kids will not come to a special world when they grow up.
Yes.
They will not go to play in a corner that is secluded for special children. They need to play with others. So if we don't make our environment, if we don't change our mindset to embrace them and embrace who they are, and also teach our own children. Remember, disability is not something we signed up for.
Yes.
Disability is a club anyone can join any day. You can walk out, get hit, get mental injury, and you will end up in the same situation. And that's what people don't understand. You're a parent, you will give birth. You have no idea, you know, because it's not something, as of now, no one knows what causes autism. Nobody knows. It's just, we are suspecting it is a gut issue. We are suspecting it is genetics. We are suspecting, it's just hypothesis as of now, what we think and what we suppose it could be at this point and at this point. Even I was very shocked when he says at birth, because if you look at the intervention and identification rate here, we are currently at least 4 years. Before it used to be 7, when the brain is already grown. So you can't help them. If you look at all these other interventions, they say the early years, because remember, it is a neuro meaning brain development disorder. That is what it is. That is what autism is, which, depending on which area of your brain that gets affected during the process of delivery, birth, and conception, etc., during that time, or even after. There are those who said they've acquired autism after. My child was normal, one day, boom, something happened. So no one can quite pinpoint. All we can do is just take precautions and embrace as they come and try and understand. And I know there are very many parents at this point who are wondering, what are we talking about? And how do they get to know and identify?
And it's a good thing that you have at least a few steps ahead.
Yeah.
Let me go back to Dan. And looking at Kenya itself, you've talked about the infrastructure that we have, the buildings. I can say for free is that I've done a lot of articles on people with disability, and looking at buildings, you find there are no ramps, you know, just stairs,
Basics.
no, perhaps elevators for people who have disabilities. And it's a good thing that some institutions have started to embrace that and making things easier for people with a disability. We have we have an association, Autism Association of Kenya.
Association of
What are
Kenya.
some of the steps that they have done that actually actualized the vision that you guys have to have a society that knows about, are willing to help, and are helping?
Now, number one is that most of these organizations that you'll find related to autism are either championed or have people who have experienced autism firsthand. Because the truth of the matter is, if you are going just to learn and study about it, it's not going to work very well for you. You must have something in you that will push you out of your comfort zone to be able to say, I want to talk about this thing, or I want to do something about it. So the Autism Association of Kenya has done a bit. They've done a good awareness. They've been here. They've done several interviews here and elsewhere. And they're working on diet. They're working on training of parents of kids with disability. They're also working on forming support groups, which we are one of those support groups which we are coming up very strongly. But besides that fact, you realize that when Kenya was upgraded to a middle income country, most of the funds were really, donors went away. So who is the current donor? It has to come either from Treasury or from the government or another arm of the government, which has not been very well forthcoming. So most of us have actually had to dig deep into our pockets to be able even to carry out this awareness, to talk to people about it, because one, we would like our children to be understood. The reason why we are doing this is not even to have anything, but our child to be understood. Such that if Miles walk in here and I tell you is autistic, and he goes and he grabs the red cable because they love colors, then you will handle him with care. You will not be like, okay, this and this and this. And the way she said, you don't know at what point you can be able to, you can acquire the problem. So if tomorrow one of you falls into that category, how do you go about it? So diagnosis will be very important, and that is what most people don't understand. Thirdly, because of the myths surrounding it. I did an interview 2 weeks ago at TV 47, and from that day I have received more than 40 calls from parents with children who are autistic, but they can't come out. They can't talk about it. Some, especially ladies, will tell you, mzee aliniacha. Even the meeting I was in yesterday, I was meeting a group of ladies with children with special needs. We were only 2 men, and I was the only male parent. The other man who was there was there for business. So you realize that it becomes so frustrating for ladies that most men are not supporting. So we came up with this organization. We are actually 3 families, and all of us are fathers saying, no, these are our children. We're going to walk this route with them, and we have to see them successful and being able to lead a normal life. So that has been going on, and the first place you always start is your next door. So we talk to our next door neighbors, we talk to people in our churches and groups which are formed, and we are also hoping that a serious program, we can be able to come up with a serious program, like maybe just a talk show on TV, probably once a week or twice in a week, where we just talk about matters, autism and integration, so that the general public is aware that this situation is there and they can be able to help. Because there are also people out who would like to walk with us this journey, but they don't know how. They also don't know what they're going through, you see. So we have to come and we have to talk about it.
Yeah. And perhaps, Moraa, you can also chip in with that. What are some of the other interventions that you have seen being made either by the government or other stakeholders, and what more should be done? Because the first thing I've realized is that in Kenya, matters disability are not quite clear. You know, even the media, we have this mistake of saying people living with disabilities, and they live with their kids, their parents, their friends, their wives, their spouses.
So you're adding a family member called disability.
Yeah, so you're adding, now we are living with disability here. And we need to change that narrative, right?
Yes, true. Very, very
What are some
true.
of the interventions that you have seen, or what more could be done? Because we have to change the perception first.
Okay.
And that is exactly what you guys are doing.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take that way back. And like he said, it is us parents who have had to stand up. See, for me, I had to stand up when I founded Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons. That was walking the journey. You get so frustrated with the health system, education system, social protection, and you come out. And I can tell you the minute, I remember when, for me, the turning point was during COVID, when COVID hit, and I came out strongly and I put my children out, that this is, sorry, I know it's a competitor, but yeah, it was on Citizen TV News, that this is how we live. And that is when, if I looked at my Facebook and phone calls, my own friends did not understand what I was going through. You know, they had no idea. Because he said it is difficult. As much as someone will come and tell you, I understand, people do not understand. So for me, I made the choice to sacrifice privacy, to put them out there so that you can have a face of, when I say autism, you're just not trying to figure, this is it. And I talk about it every day. Today we are in hospital, today we are having an EEG, tomorrow we're having issues with school, we had seizures. I remember there is a day...
You made use of social media to the fullest.
To raise awareness. And even if us coming together, most of us it's through social media. When there is something for parents, we all jump into social media, WhatsApp groups that we have formed, and that way we try and support each other, because like I said, the spectrum is so wide that if you don't have someone else, you just look out for who has gone through this, give me some support, you know. So we've seen so many of our organizations and our support groups come together to try and alleviate. There is also that stigma and being left alone. I know even going to church, you can't go to church. We actually there is one of the support groups that has a forum where on a Saturday you come just adults and worship. You're a parent, you want to, but you know, I can sit with my child, they have a meltdown, they decide they're going to run to the front, and everyone will judge me. I'd rather stay at home and watch TV, watch church through TV, because people are not understanding. For example, Andrew fidgets, he steams. Steaming is that behavior they acquire to try and calm themselves now, so that they are able to cope with the environment. Remember, the environment really, really matters, and depending also with their level of sensitivity. Remember, they see things differently, they hear things differently, they feel things differently. There are textures, clothes they can't wear, you know. There is food textures they can't stand. Then there is lights that can even cause the epileptic seizures, you know. There are flickering lights, and that's something for media, they always have to put that disclaimer. Yeah, you know, if it's a program that it's a requirement. But you know, people don't take it.
Even how many media houses are doing that?
Exactly, how many are? You know, because for me, my son might be watching and the next thing they're having a seizure. And depending on how severe that seizure is, it can kill them. Let's be factual. We cannot even, he mentioned medicine. We are on daily meds. I'm on 30,000 per month medication.
Actually, that was supposed to be my next question. It's hard for everyone.
It is.
Right now.
People say people with disability are poor. It's actually, disability is very expensive. Very, very expensive. You know, so those challenges is where now we try and come together. I remember during COVID, we came together as an organization and tried to support other parents by supplying medicine for 1 month, because everyone lost their job, had to stay at home, could not go see therapists. So we had to come up with programs where they're able to come together. We bring in specialists to train them how to do things from home, because sometimes you'll find there is a parent who cannot afford to pay for therapy every other day. Because you can tell me that I need therapy 3 times a week, and at the same time, that therapy, there is those very subsidized ones that are accessible. Then there is other hospitals where it's between 1,400 to 5,000 per session. Wow. And you tell me I need 3.
in a way.
Yes, that's why we're saying, can they be integrated in the school? Let it be. So will I do school?
Really champions.
You know, what do you pay for? What do you give up? If they don't take medicine, you're risking. If they don't take supplements for meals, it's something else. So if a special needs parent gives you their budget, it can be very, very overwhelming. And I will just take a shift. I sit at the National Council, the board for the National Council. It's as a representative for the neurodiverse community. One thing I can say, because we mentioned government, all this advocacy we have done, at least finally someone is listening. Finally, we actually have a budget for the neurodiverse. After so many years of fighting and writing petitions and doing survey, because I remember we did the data during COVID as an organization, as Andy speaks, just asking how much is your school fees, how much is your medical, how much is therapy. And if you look at a parent's budget, yet like you said, 80% of us were left. I've also been a single parent. I've just been lucky enough to I got engaged like 2 weeks ago, you know, and it takes, thank you very much, but it takes a very strong man to actually stand up, because there is also culture when they say, and the ratio, let's talk of the ratio, the ratio of 1 girl to 4 boys. I have 3 boys. He has a boy. Autism affects more of the boys. Yes. And they also say there is where that the girls know how to hide it more. That's why we're also focusing on identifiers and assessment, so that we are able to catch it. This could also
help in research, right?
Yeah. So you find that at least we are seeing a good trajectory towards that. But what we're championing for also is, I am a parent. You're giving 5% of a GPO. Some of our children will never get employed. First of all, our education system transition is non-existent. You're talking about CBC 100% transition. What about our kids? After class 8, don't they grow up to be adults? Why can't we set up vocational centers in all the secondary schools, so that we have that, the way you have a special unit in primary, as much as you will write them off that they will not be able to do all that. You gave the example of Kodidi. He's so good in music. Why? Because they had the resources to embrace, identify the talent and nurture it to that level that he's now an icon. But what do we do with our kids? You know, we get branded. We feel the pain on behalf of our children. That's the sad reality. We take in, we are like, you have to this cushion that whatever because they're so pure of heart. If you meet them, if you spend time with them and see, trust you me, the level of emotional intelligence. For me, if you walk in, I will not look at you as a stranger. I look at my son. How he treats you will inform me how true, how sincere of a person you are.
All right. Dan, perhaps you can chip in with that, because looking at what the government has been, at least it's a good thing that your efforts are finally being recognized, and at least something is being done, because we've seen in developing countries, sometimes things take a very long time, because the first thing is to demystify the condition and try to manage it yourself, and then you have to go out there.
Exactly.
Now, let's go to the finances, because it's quite hard for everyone. And now you have to have a caregiver. Right now, you two already have a caregiver.
Yeah, of course.
Despite the fact that you still have meds, you still have to go to work, you still also have to be a parent, and this kid has to go to school.
And pay rent.
Exactly.
Pay for everything at the same cost
as
which someone else is paying. So there is no exemption that, okay, I have a child with special need. There is nowhere that I'll walk in and I'll be given a consideration. So those are the facts that we are bringing to the table.
Even tax relief.
Even tax relief. I had to write a letter.
That is what I
just asking.
Because we see there's KDIPA. And at the end of the day, it's election year, but at the end of the day, we need champions who will voice this. You have some of the senators, Gertrude Musuve. We also have Tim Wanyonyi, who is the chairman of KDIPA. And that is the Kenya Disability Parliamentarian Association. Just trying to clear that out. There are some of the institutions that could be championing for more allocation, both in the national and county levels.
Yes. So like we were talking, we were saying a person with a disability has that tax relief. But when this person is your child, what happens to you?
Yes, because
now it is you who is going through the trauma on behalf of your son.
And the government says
it has to be there.
And he cannot work. At that time, he cannot work.
Yes.
So why can't you give me that tax relief? So that the amount that is relieved on my pay can go towards his medicine. I was at one of the hospitals and I wanted to get his drugs. His drugs cost me 18,000 per month. And NHF just told me, we're not covering for those drugs. And I asked them, listen, so who should you be covering? Someone taking Panadol and maybe once in 2 months, and my son who is constantly, morning and evening, who needs this medicine to be under insurance? Why do I need to go and look for a third-party insurance, and yet NHIF takes care of you 100%? Why can't they say, for this kind of medicine, we have this kind of a concession? You see.
Let me ask you, you mentioned insurance, third party. Have you been welcomed with open arms at an insurance?
Let me tell you that what you are discussing
without extra terms and conditions that you look at and you ask yourself, why am I taking insurance? This is what you're giving me.
The first 2 months when my son was born, we spent 1.8 million in the hospital. Trust me, you had your savings there, now you are begging. That's why she said it's very expensive. Tomorrow, someone sees you with a car today, tomorrow you don't have it because you probably have to sell it, give it out to be able to cover for your own, for your child. Or maybe he falls sick. Like right now, the flu that has been going on. So you realize that he cannot tell you that he has a problem. You as a parent, you must sit down, look at them, figure it out. And sometimes you go to a physician who is also not very well knowledgeable about being able to handle them. One doctor once told me, suniambie tu. I told him, no, you have to assess him, look at him, so that you can be able to see what is going on. So it took us, something which should have taken us 30 minutes, took us 2 hours. And that is because the boy was also having one of those bad days. So I also had to sit there. Looking at that situation, you are also expected to be at work. And if you are not at work, your boss has your case. So we are going through a myriad of issues. Some of them we cannot be able to explain to you to understand fully. But we are saying that information has to be out there at any given time.
Now, Sylvia, still on the same. We are looking at you two as parents of children with autism. I've had a 1.8 somewhere, I've had a 30,000 per month somewhere, I've had a 18,000. Let's look at the situation in counties like Turkana, in West Pokot, in the northern frontier, and some of the poor counties that we have in the country. The situation is a little bit dire.
It's the same.
And these people need this help. And at the end of the day, they will always get help from the government. If at all everything is moving from the legislation to the policies, that is when they can only get help.
Yes.
And we are just hoping that it will not be only in Nairobi, because we don't have schools, such schools in Turkana, in West Pokot, in other counties. The situation is quite dire.
Let me talk about devolution at this point. And we are in like you said, it is the political season. And Kenya is ranked according to one of the best policies when it comes to disability, actually. We are signatories to SDGs, to UNCRPDs, but we have paper. I cannot take that paper and claim for service at my county level that the government has signed. I demand. No, you saw. Last week, the president ascended the Children Rights Act, which says free services for children with disabilities. You tell me if I walk in and I tell you the president said, do you know how I'll be treated? You know, so we are very good with policies written down. The challenge is, how are we with implementation? Who do we run to? As I said in the council, the one thing I can tell you for free is that we have the policies, we have all these things, but it's like a dog that does not have teeth. If it's an issue with the Ministry of Education, I can only point out, ministry, this is supposed to be done, but who is keeping them accountable? If it's the Ministry of Health, like we said, NHIF will just tell you, no, we can't. They cater for cancer. Why can't our therapy services be catered for? Why do I have to pay for therapy from my pocket? Yet it is that therapy that will be an intervention for my child to live a near normal life, to become a citizen who's going to be productive, if and only if we have early intervention, the right time, the right way, in the right manner. Not throwing them in a room and saying, oh, checkbox. You know, there is always that thing. Even if you look at our institutions, when you're talking about disability matters, they will tell you 24 hours prior to the meeting that, oh, we need people to come talk about disability. You're just ticking your box. Who will be able to cancel everything and run and do that? Because that's one of the challenges that we face as advocates for special needs. You find there is a meeting being called, you're only learning about it in like, what do you call this? The night before.
Yes.
That is as last week, a night before. So if I have my day, I'm supposed to dump everything and run. You see? So you're put in a place where you have to keep trying to weigh what is the best way to handle this? How is the best way to do this? One, without losing my job. Because remember, we have day jobs as advocates. We don't get paid, you know, when we're doing all these things. It's because we're just trying to make a better future for our children. We're trying to come together, raise our voices, and hope that someone will hear. And all these beautiful written policies will somewhat come to be implemented. Because the fact is, in Samburu, that child will get that convulsion. They don't know what it is. The child will die, and they move on with their lives. You know?
Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you 2 minutes each. This conversation, you can have this conversation. I'm quite passionate about matters of people with disability, but allow me, as you compose your minds, 2 minutes each. Let me say, Stanley Opio, say well done. Mwacha Isaac, you say tuned in. Masicute, you say tuned in. All ears on you guys. Let's try help our own society by our own solutions. I think it's because of what you're saying. We have the best policies, we have the best written. But when it comes to the actualization,
we don't have it.
Tuned in for Komani, I say thank you, Sharifa K. Chokocho. But because of the interest of time, let's first of all have your 2 minutes, kindly.
2 minutes practical, 2 minutes or 30 seconds.
All right.
Okay, so generally what we would call upon the society, let's have inclusion, let's have integration. If you're my neighbor, my son is screaming the roof down. I had that for like 7 days. No one came to check in. At least no one chased me out. We had a parent in Nakuru who called. She's been moving, she can't move anymore because of her child. Let's learn to embrace. Let's not be very judgmental. You don't know what someone is going through at that point in life. Check in. If you don't see that child, you know, we had a case where the parent died, the child followed because no one knew this child was nonverbal. No one cared. Let's go back to they belong to the community. We are a community. We're going so much on this West Side thing that we are losing our core values of living together in unity. We're trying so hard to run away from the sole thing that made us as Africans one of the most admirable cultural, you know, society and embodiment. To my government and all those who want to become leaders, let's be true leaders. Let disability be a fact you consider at the beginning of everything. Let it be at the back of your mind. Inclusion, inclusion, inclusion.
Are you shocked that some we are looking at manifestos and we are only...
They are not
everything
there.
else is just swept under the carpet?
Of course.
It's just a mention.
And it's just a mention because it is a requirement.
And they want
and
the
that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
The same people.
You're doing a checkbox. Check your conscience. Because I am a parent. Yeah, my child might not be able to vote, but I am a parent. I have a right to say. I can tell you for free, there are people we invited to support our project and they did not see value because it was special needs. But I am the value. You're focusing on my child. I am the value. You know, if we were to rally as parents, we have a very, very massive voice. So I'd like to encourage that parent who's sitting there and thinking the world is going to come to an end. We get God's grace to run through this. Believe and embrace your child for who they are, not the child that you are hoping they could be. Give them an opportunity to thrive.
Well put. Well put, well put. Not the child that we envision as parents, but the kid that we have. Done.
Wow. Like she said, it's a journey and a half. The walk you'll take in 30 seconds, I'll do that in probably 20 minutes because it's a special journey. Number one is that our kids are special to us. So most of the time you branded them, you actually end up branding us. So we are talking to the community and telling them, listen, this is here to stay with us. So you must also be prepared to stay with us. Now, the other reason why we are doing this is we are not going to live forever. Tomorrow I might go to be with the Lord. But does my neighbor know about my child? My cousins, do they know about my child? Do they know, are they educated enough or enlightened enough to be able to live with that child? So we are putting that word out there. And finally, because this issue has affected mostly mothers, we are coming up as men and we are saying we have to stand with our children. And that culture of saying mtoto ni wa mama has to come to an end, and we have to say this child is ours, both of us. You have to walk your route, I have to walk my route, and make sure that our child is supported.
Thank you so much.
With all that, we are still coming up, we are still a small group, but I can give my contact.
Yes, by all means.
So for support and to be able just to talk with families and to be able to bring them together, my name is Owiti. You will get me on 0723.
Camera is this one?
0723 10 30 50. My name is Owiti.
You have a Facebook fan page?
We are working on that, and the organization is coming up. We know within the next 1 month we'll be able to run everything.
Sylvia, contacts Andy Speaks.
Sylvia Moraa Mochabo, founder Andy Speaks for Special Needs Persons. Same on Facebook, LinkedIn, on Twitter and IG is at Andy Speaks. And personal, Sylvia Moraa Mochabo, recently acquired Ankinsiku. And our number is 0734 635274. And we also have WhatsApp, so you can reach out on social media. We respond, we guide you, and support where we can.
Indeed, let's reach out, parents, people, even politicians. They are all
especially politicians,
because we need to change that narrative. There's no point of having very good laws and policies, but we cannot implement them, and these are our own kids. Thank you so much indeed for watching. My name is Ben Troy Njue. I can see Nancy Okware on standby. She's coming up with Kuruzi, Mashinani and Tamrini. But for me and Lucy Moraa, who has been our sign language interpreter, we call it a day. But we can continue this conversation on social media. In any way, just make the world better. And speaking of that, congratulations for your engagement. And check out Cody Lee. He has so many talents, and he's a kid with a myriad of challenges and multiple disabilities.
We actually have some in Kenya. There is a child I met who actually, you just say, I was born on this date, they tell you which day it was.
All right. Thank you so much for making time, and all the best.
Thank you very much.